Welcome to the Resume Storyteller, bringing you interviews with industry experts, regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Guys, I have with me career transition and networking coach Greg Roche. He helps introverts grow their professional network to find career opportunities. And he is the author of the book, The Fast and Easy Guide to Networking for Introverts, which is available on Amazon. Greg, thank you so much for joining me. I've been delighted to follow you on LinkedIn, and just a testament to the power of the platform to put you in my path. So I appreciate you being on here.
Great. I'm excited to be here today. Thanks so much for having me.
So I gave a very, very brief bio about your book and what you do today, but what I don't know is how you came to this, to the role that you're doing today, and what prompted you to write the book. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, when people say, "What do you do?" I say it really simply. I help introverts grow their professional networks. I do this by writing on LinkedIn. I do webinars, I do coaching. As you said, I have a book out. I wrote that last year. I also have a guide, an ebook that goes with the book that I'm publishing here in the next week or so.
Great.
I came to this through my own struggles with networking. I am an introvert myself. It was something that I always heard people say, you need to network. I didn't really know how to do it. And about 9 years ago, I was laid off from a job, and I'd worked there for 9 years. I hadn't really networked. I hadn't looked for a job. All of a sudden, I needed a job, and I did all the things that normal people do. I got my resume together. I applied online, and none of that really worked. I had to start figuring out how to connect with people. And through that, I learned how to connect as an introvert without going to like networking events, not making cold calls, any of that stuff. And as I did that, I realized there's a different way to network than what most people think. So I've really focused over the past several years helping people learn a different approach to networking, one that works better when you are an introvert, and one that's going to make it a little bit more comfortable and a little bit easier to do if going to big events isn't your kind of thing.
Cold calling. Yeah, I know that the idea of big events and cold calling people makes hives to a lot of people. So I love what you have to say about this sort of a non-traditional approach that I imagine during the pandemic really was a natural fit because the in-person events were gone, right? So
yeah, it was interesting because as I said, I wrote the book last year, which was right during the start and the height of the pandemic. Back in 2020 was when I wrote the book. And as I was doing that, and I was talking about how to network in a little bit different way where you don't meet a lot of people at one time, you're not trading business cards, it really dawned on me that it was really applicable to the situation we were in for everybody. So it was helpful not just for introverts, but also people who might have been extroverts who just couldn't go to events anymore. But coming at it from this standpoint worked and continues to work in sort of the virtual world that we're in when we're meeting people online via Zoom call or good old fashioned phone calls. People still want to be able to connect and grow their network. So if you come at it from a little bit different approach, you can still do that and stay connected and continue to grow your professional relationships.
No, I agree. And so you write a great deal about the challenges that introverts face when they're networking. However, do you feel like there are any advantages to being an introvert when it comes to job search that maybe extroverts don't have?
I think introverts can use the strengths that they have to grow their networks. In my opinion, I think introverts spend less time in a conversation talking about themselves and more time listening. And that's not to say that extroverts aren't good listeners. I don't want a bunch of extroverts to start, showing up and telling me they know how to listen too. What I'm saying is introverts tend to listen in the conversation more than they talk. And that's a really key piece when you're growing a professional relationship, is to listen to what the other person has to say. I'll always tell people, when you sit down to talk to somebody in a conversation, if you don't know what to talk about, or if you're struggling to come up with things to say, always ask the other person about their favorite topic. And people will say,
go on and on.
Right. Well, what's their favorite topic? Right. And I say, it's the thing they know the most about, which is themselves. So if you ask somebody about themselves, they'll start talking. And if you listen, you'll start to pick up on things that you can do to help them. You'll find ways that you can either give them advice or introductions or recommendations. That's an acronym AIR that Hannah Morgan has. I think we both know Hannah, and she gives a lot of great advice. But I've heard her say, give air when you're in these conversations. And the point is, give something to somebody else. And they're going to see you as somebody, number one, they really like talking to you because you listen. And number two, you provide value to them, and you're going to be somebody that they in turn want to help. And that's how you grow your network. And that's how you have those conversations. So as an introvert, I think you do have a little bit of an advantage if you focus on that strength of listening to what other people are working on or struggling with or challenged with, and find out ways that you can help them. And then from there, that relationship's going to grow. And before you know it, you're going to be connecting with other people. They're going to introduce you to other people. They're going to see you as a person that they really value and want to help out. I think that's where introverts can have that advantage in some cases over extroverts, just by playing to their strengths of listening.
I love that. And it's funny when people, I've read studies about how people when people are skilled in reflective listening, which is a lot of what you're talking about, the perception of the person, that's on the other end is that, oh gosh, they're so intuitive. They're so knowledgeable when they're really just listening to you talk. I found that fascinating.
Right. And I mean, if you think about it, like, who do you really like talking to, or who do you like to be in a conversation with? I mean, I think a conversation is two ways. So you want the other person to share and give input and insights into whatever you're saying, but do you enjoy sitting there with somebody who is listening to you, or is just the one who's talking all the time? Right. I mean, I think you feel that people have given you their attention. And when people give you their attention, those are the people you want to talk to more. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I saw that you posted, it was probably in the last month or so, about how everyone always says you need to network, but no one really tells you how in the world to get started. And lots of people are always weighing in with suggestions. But I'd love to hear from you. Maybe what are 3 easy ways to really get started on this? What's your approach?
Yeah, I think if you go out and you Google how to network, you're probably going to get what I would say is mostly bad advice. And the reason for that is the results you're going to get are some article written in Fortune or Inc. or Forbes or something like that, where somebody said, hey, you got to go to a networking event and here's how you plan that out. And for a lot of people, they're going to read that and go, I don't want to do that. So they go, yes, I know I need to network. I know I need to do that. I've heard that. I don't know anybody who says networking is useless.
Skip it.
I know people who say networking doesn't work, and I think they think it doesn't work because the way they're trying to do it isn't working. That's where I really hope that I can connect with people. And a lot of what I do is so that I can help people who were similar to me, have the same struggles that I had, look at this a different way and come at it from a different approach. The 3 things I would say to make it easier, especially if you're struggling to networking, is number 1, start with who you know. And this is when I tell people and they go, well, that doesn't sound like networking. If I already know somebody, how am I networking with them? But networking is about getting introduced to other people and meeting other people. And most of the people that you've met in your life come from organizational or geographical proximity, is what I call it. When you're growing up as a kid, all the people you know were the kids you went to school with, who lived in your neighborhood. That was your world.
On your street, right?
Yeah, geography dictated who you knew. And as you moved through life, you went on to school or you started working. The people you knew were the people that you were working around. So the people you sat next to in your office when we were all in offices, or the people who you work with on a day-to-day basis in your organization, those are the people you know. Now, those people go off into the world and they move on and they do other things, but we often lose touch with them. And what I tell people to do is reconnect with your dormant ties. And these are the people that, again, you knew, but you've lost touch with. And the reason why you want to connect with them is they already know you. And you've lost touch, go back and start there. It's a very easy conversation to start. And it often will lead to lots of other directions you can go with your networking. It's also less intimidating to start with who you know. So number one, start with who you already know. Go reconnect with people you've lost touch with. The second thing I would tell people, come into this with the mindset that you're going to give to other people. This is something you're going to do as a giving exercise. You're not going into this saying, what am I going to get out of this? What's in it for me? But you're going to come at it from the fact of, what can I give to my professional relationships before I expect anything in return? Of course, we all hope that through our networking, we're going to find either new job opportunities or new business opportunities, or we're just going to find interesting people to have in our network. But you have to be a giver at first, and then it will come back to you, as it usually does. I think the third thing I say to people is be easy to help. And what that means is being really specific with what it is you're looking for in the relationship. If you want to find a new job, you need to be really specific about which companies you want to work for. If you want to learn about a new industry, be really specific about the people or the positions that you want to learn about in that industry. If you're looking for new business opportunities, be really specific about the person or the people that you want to connect with. Getting specific makes you really easy to help, and it makes it so that people want to help you. I think everybody wants to help, but if you're hard to help, they're going to find reasons, or there will be natural.
They just don't know. They don't know how to do it.
Right. If somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me?" I say, "Sure." We're going to have to dig into that a little bit. What kind of job do you want? Where do you want to work? What roles are you interested in? You're going to have, if you don't know any of those things, where am I going to point you? Who am I going to introduce you to if I don't know that? And if you prepare that in advance, you do some thinking about that, and you talk to your connections and say, "This is what I'm looking for," they're going to be like, "Oh, great. I can help you right away." And they feel amazing about it, because they're like, I introduced Greg to somebody else, and that relationship turned into an opportunity for him. I feel great. I feel awesome. I helped. I used my network. So those are the three things I would say if people are trying to figure out how to do it is, like I said, start with who you know, come at this with a giving mindset, and be easy to help. And there's details in those, but starting there and thinking about how can I do each of those things will help you get started. And as you go, you'll learn and you'll figure out, how do I keep this network growing? How do I keep making connections? How do I find these opportunities?
I love that. One thing, I've been thinking about, especially in terms of the dormant network that you referenced, point one, the people that you starting with people you do know. I know so many people are embarrassed because they have lost touch with someone, and they feel horrible about the idea of reaching out after 2 years and then to top it off, asking for help. I feel like the holidays, the new year is a great time to sort of have a good icebreaker and say, it's this time of the year, happy holidays, or I hope your New Year's off to a good start, and get that conversation going. But do you have ideas on how to approach people where it's a long dormant network, but you really would like to reconnect?
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the dormant ties concept. I first learned about it reading Adam Grant's book, Give and Take, which is not about networking, but in the second chapter, there's stories about networking, and this concept of dormant ties comes up. And it actually came from a study that the MIT Sloan School of Management did years ago. And they took a group of executives and they asked these executives to go through their list of people they had worked with in the past, people who they'd either colleagues or people who were partners with them. And they asked them to go through and list them. And these were all people they had lost touch with. And they said, reach out to these people via email or however you can get in touch with them and just try to reconnect with them. And the executives were really skeptical of this. They said, these people aren't going to respond. I've lost touch with them. It's been a couple of years since I talked to them. And they were really surprised by the response rate. They got a much higher response rate from these dormant ties than they expected. And in addition, once they started talking to them, these dormant ties came back and offered them solutions to whatever business problems they were having. They had the executives explain what they were working on. And these people came back and said, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? The quality of the information and suggestion they got back was way above what they expected. So to your point, people feel like, I haven't talked to this person in a couple of years. They're probably not going to respond. They're like, why are you reaching out? And this study actually showed that people will respond at a much higher rate than you think. So I was just
with a higher quality response.
Absolutely. And part of the conclusions were, because you already know these people, they know your name, they know who you are, you're not some stranger, they're more willing to reconnect. And what I've found is when I do this, even if I haven't talked to people in a long time, the funny thing happens is I'll always get this response of, oh, I was just thinking of you the other day.
Right.
They'll be like, oh, I was thinking of you too. And we can chalk that up to the universe or karma or whatever it is. But I think we all have thoughts of, oh, I worked with this person, I worked with that, I wonder what they're doing. And nobody ever acts on it. So if you're the one who's acting on it, people will come back and be like, I was just thinking about you. How are you doing? Would love to know what's going on. And once you start doing that, you do find out, hey, where have they moved on to? You may have worked at the same company together, but now they work somewhere else. And you look at that company and you think, hey, that's kind of an interesting company. Maybe I'll look at that. Maybe I'm interested in working there. And even better, you already know somebody that works there and you're connected to them and you start talking to them. And so when it comes to, hey, maybe I want to get a job there, or there's an open role, you're already in the door. You're not even trying to apply online, right? You're already in there.
You're right. You have an internal champion. But exactly. I agree with you. I feel like dormant people get excited to reconnect with long dormant ties, because look, networking or keeping in touch is a two-way street. And even though you didn't keep up with me, it means I didn't keep up with you. And so the responsibility lies on with both parties. And so people are often delighted to connect with someone after years.
Right. And if you're the one that reaches out, they're like, oh, that's great. You know, they took the initiative. They reached out to me. Right. I'm so glad to connect. And you're the person you're very impressive to them because they're like, wow, you kept up with me. You thought of me. Again, if you put yourself in the other person's shoes and somebody reaches out to you, it's like, I was thinking of you the other day. Who doesn't like to be thought of? Right. Even if it's just a passing thought, like, you thought of me and you remembered me and you reached out to me.
And you took that extra step and you reached out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. People forget about that. And you mentioned the holidays. And I just thought of this when you mentioned it. Lots of people have holiday lists or they send holiday cards. Mm-hmm. And they have this whole list of people that they go through and maybe they handwrite it. Maybe they just print labels and send them. Go through that list. Who are some of those people? And they might just be family or friends, but which ones have you not talked to? You just send them a card every year. Find a way to connect with them. Find a way to send them an email. Find a way to have a conversation. See what happens, right? If you can't think of anybody to start with your list of people you send cards to. If you do that, if you don't do that, think of all the people that, you've worked with in the past. Like I say, like mentally sit at your desk at your old job. What did it look like? What was the floor? Who were the people
you liked hanging out with, right?
Who did you stand up and go talk to when you were going to get an extra cup of coffee or water or get your lunch? Who's on the way to the kitchen? Who is that person? Where are they now? What are they doing? Go reconnect and find out what's going on with them.
Yeah. And regardless of the evils of social media, which I know exists, one great strength of it is the ability to really to find out what they're up to.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
So a lot of people, and I'm sure you have heard this objection, people will say, I don't have time to network. I'm just too busy with my day job. What suggestions do you have to help people carve out time for this?
The first thing I start with when people tell me, I know I need to network, but I'm too busy, or I know I need to network, but I don't have time. I tell them to change their language. I say, if you say, I don't have time, I want you to change those words to, it's not a priority. If you say, I know I need to network, but it's not a priority. Okay, test that out. How does that feel? If it feels great, fine. Don't network. It isn't a priority. Move on with your life. But if you say, no, that doesn't feel good. I really, really do need to network. It is a priority. Then I would say, take that task. And this is what I do with any task whenever I run into obstacles or I can't seem to get started. I can't seem to get going. I can't make progress. I break it down into the smallest possible activity that I can. I take that task and I break it into the smallest chunk I can. If you're too busy to send an email to 10 people reaching out, send it to one. If you're too busy to have a conversation with 5 people, have a conversation with one. Get to the smallest possible step you can and just do that. That's where you start. Because most of this is resistance to starting. Most of the I don't have time is I can't get started. And if you can get it small enough, then you can get started. And once you do get started, you usually find out that wasn't as hard as I thought. It didn't take as much time as I thought. I got better results than I expected. And you know what? I feel like I'll do another one. I'll send one message. Wow, that was pretty simple and done. Who else can I send a message to? I find myself doing that all the time. If I can't. And
breaking it into those little chunks allows you to take advantage of little snippets of time. It could even be, all right, you need to send emails. Let me write the email for the first time. Then I'll come up with a list of the people as a second chunk, right? A second little task. And then the third one might be hitting send.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways to break it up.
Yeah. I try to, the trick I use and what I try to tell people is, if I asked you to spend 1% of your day on this, could you find 1% of your day to do this? And they're like, well, yeah, 1% seems pretty small. It's about the smallest percent you can have, right? In terms of whole numbers. And then I say, you realize 1% of your day is 15 minutes. There are 1,400.
It doesn't have 15 minutes, right?
You have 15 minutes. Can you find 15 minutes? And if you go, I can't find 15 minutes, then find 5 minutes, right? How long does it take you to go onto LinkedIn or go into your email, find somebody's name, find their email or their LinkedIn and send a message that says, hey, I was thinking about you the other day, was checking in to see how you're doing, would love to reconnect. That's all you have to do. You're done. Networking's done for the day. We'll call that networking and you walk away.
That's such a great, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, the key to making that work is showing up every day. So consistency is important here because if you're going to say, I'm going to make it really small and I'm just going to do a little bit each day, it's important you show up each day. And that's where it's important that this becomes a habit. I'm a big fan of habits, whether it's Atomic Habits by James Clear or Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, any of the other habit approaches. I think those are key skills that people need to learn. And then you apply that to networking. How do you build a networking habit that says at the first thing in the beginning of the day, when I open up my browser and I go to LinkedIn, I'm going to look for one person to connect with and do that and see if you can continue to do that each day. And you start doing that. And before you know it, you're going to have people asking you for things, not for things, but asking you about opportunities. And you're going to have more than you can handle, which is great. It's a great problem to have. But the consistency
you're making a habit out of the small, out of taking care of those small tasks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And then it becomes something you do, and then it becomes a part of who you are. And then people go, wow, you're such a great networker. You keep up with everybody, you know everybody, you talk to people, and you think it's just showing up and doing a little bit every single day.
I mean, that advice goes well beyond networking, right? I mean, it's a great way to help manage overwhelm of any kind related to job search. or anything really, I suppose.
Yep.
Yeah, my I don't know if you know Sarah Johnson, but she always says the best way to manage overwhelm or the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah.
So now that we are coming out of the pandemic, it feels like some of the more formal, quote unquote, networking events are on the rise, which is not something that appeals to a lot of introverts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any suggestions either for icebreaker lines or approaches for those who just feel the idea of making small talk with a bunch of strangers makes them cringe?
Absolutely. That's the one thing that I just really don't like doing. If I go to a networking event in the past, when I've gone, I've tried to find the nearest corner and just back into it and hope somebody comes.
Where's the food table?
Yeah. I mean, my point of view on this is you can network without going to events. So I'm probably not the best person, but here's what I would say. Here's one thing I would say. Here's what I would have said. If I'm going to some social event, and this might not work for everybody, so take this with a grain of salt.
Okay.
If you have to go to an event, here's what I tell people. Wear something unique. And I'm not talking like Elton John in a Donald Duck costume, right? I'm just talking that something that stands out a little if you can do it and do it in good taste. Give people a reason to make comments to start a discussion. So I have this red jacket. And around this time of the year, I love bringing it out because it's perfect for the holidays. But it's sort of this red suede type of jacket with like these paisley type of designs.
Like a lounge, one of those lounge jackets?
Yeah. And I'll wear that and I've worn that to things and people will just come up to me and start talking about the jacket. And it gives me an opportunity to just have a conversation. It works for me. And again, that may or may not work for you, but if you have to go to an event, do something to stand out just a little bit. Now, if you're going to an event for like a job networking thing where you need to look professional and that's important, you may not want to do that. But if you can work something in that's just a little bit unique so that people will it will break the ice and you can start to have those conversations.
I tell you what, I'm an extrovert and the idea of doing that scares me half to death, but I love it. But to your point, you're saying you don't have to go to those events, but sometimes they're not networking events. They're holiday get-togethers with neighbors and things like that, which still can be intimidating, but you do feel like you want to go because it's a little different than the corporate party, right?
Yep.
So buy a red lounge jacket. Is what I'm hearing from you.
That's what's worked for me, right? There
you go.
That works for me, but it kind of depends on your own style.
Good stuff. My husband has these god awful plaid loud pants that he wears for parties. You all would like each other, I think.
And I'm sure he gets asked about them all the time, right?
Yes, he does. I don't know if that was the intent, but he does.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of in-person networking, I'm talking more about the events where it's clear the intent is to talk about your job or your careers and that kind of thing. Is there a time when it's okay in your mind to share a resume? And if not, what should you be prepared to share?
You should only give your resume to somebody who has asked for it. So if it's a hiring manager or a recruiter or somebody, a connection that says, give me your resume, then you should give it to them.
Okay. Only only give it when asked. I love that.
That's my point of view on it. But instead, what you can do if you're at a networking event, or maybe it's a career fair or a job fair or something, something of that nature. I say, if you have to give something to somebody who's a networking connection, give them your list of target companies. The list of the companies where you want to learn more about, or you'd actually just want to work there. And it should be an actual list that's typed out, formatted, look nice, like a resume or a cover letter, something like that. And something you can physically give to them or email to them. And there's this very specific reason for that. Number one, when you are networking, you're trying to meet new people. But if you come to me and you say, who can you introduce me to? My mental Rolodex, I don't know where to start. right? So for those for your listeners who are listening that know what a Rolodex is, my contact
I do.
list, I don't know where to start if you say, who do you know? But if you give me a list of companies and say, do you know anybody at one of these companies? I can go to that spot in my mental Rolodex and say, I know somebody who works here.
Yeah.
Or what I might say is, I don't know anybody at this company, but have you thought of this other company that does something similar? And I do know somebody there. It gives people a place to start to make you easier to help, right? Remember, be easy to help. This makes it easy for them to help them. And then all they're doing is making the connection, maybe via email or by phone call, which is way easier than taking your resume and trying to find somebody in recruiting to hand it to. If you hand me your resume, I don't know who to go to. I have to track that down. And if I don't work at the company, right? If there's a company you want to work at and you give me your resume, how am I going to give that to anybody? So the target list makes you really easy to help, and it makes it so that people can introduce you. The other thing it does is it primes your connections brain with that information. So we all have availability bias, which means our brain accesses the information that is most available. If somebody looks at a list of the target companies and they read that, they're not going to necessarily memorize it, but it's in their subconscious. And what's going to happen is they're going to start to see those companies all over the place. They're going to see their advertisements. They're going to see job ads that pop up for them. And they're going to say, hey, Greg had this company on their list. I wonder if he's seen this. And then they're going to send that over to you and say, hey, have you seen this? I knew you were looking at this company. I didn't know if you saw this. So you create what I call our opportunity scouts out in the world, which are people who don't even know they're doing it for you, but are actually going to think of opportunities or find opportunities and bring them back to you. That's why I really believe in the power of the target company list and think that that's what you should be giving to people instead of your resume.
It makes you top of mind. How big of a list do you think it should be? Do you think it should be 10 companies, 3 companies, or does it matter?
I think it should be at least 10. And the reason why I say that, it's got to be enough to where it might be possible that somebody knows somebody there, or at least gives them enough information to come up with ideas or suggestions. You could make it 20 if you wanted. What's really important is that it's a list. Like I said, you can either email or hand to somebody and they can take with them, because they might just put it on their desk or they might throw it away, which is fine. I mean, they're not going to feel bad about that. I know when people give me a resume and I put it on my desk, I always feel bad about like chucking it if I don't do anything with it, because I'm like, oh, they give me their resume, I got to do something with it, but I can never figure out what to do. So I think the length is, it's important to have enough. If you have too much, right, 50, that's probably going to be too overwhelming. So somewhere between 10 and 20 is probably enough to give people enough information to start helping you out.
That's so interesting about the, and you're right, the creating an opportunity scout, because once that connection's in your brain, you start to see it everywhere. Like when you're on the market for a certain kind of a car and then you see those kind of cars everywhere, it happens. Yeah,
100%. That's the example that I give, is you buy a new car and then you see that car everywhere.
Yeah.
2 weeks before you bought it, there was still the same number of cars on the road that matched that car's description. You just weren't paying attention. Now that you own the car, it's nuts. Yeah. You see it everywhere.
And it's wild. No, that's wild. I love that suggestion. And it's much less pain. I think it's so much easier to give someone a list of companies in your resume. It's absolutely much less cringy. Yeah. So what about virtual networking? Are there ways to break the ice on social platforms so that you can build and grow your network outside of in person?
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine, yes, that's what you do day in, day out.
I love that you asked this question, because why are we having this conversation today? Why are you and I talking today?
Mm-hmm.
How? I think I commented on one of your posts.
Is that how I started? I can't remember. Yeah. And then your stuff started showing up in my feed probably.
I left a comment. You liked it or replied. And then we started leaving comments on each other's posts, and you connected with me. And then we started talking about this, and I didn't cold call you or cold pitch you anything. I didn't, have to stalk you down or anything, but we started an online conversation around a common topic. And then it went from there. And I think you can do that on LinkedIn, especially. You can do it on any social platform, but LinkedIn lends itself more to the professional community. And if you find people who are interesting or talking about interesting things, you can even just follow them. Like, people think about you have to connect on LinkedIn, but now with the follow feature, you can just follow somebody and you start to see what they're posting. And then you comment and leave a good comment. That's the key. You got to leave a thoughtful comment that's valuable, continues the conversation. And most people who post see who comments and they want to go find out who that person is. I know I do. I know most people do.
Me too. Mm-hmm.
You can tell, I mean, you can tell on LinkedIn who people are that just post automatically and never look at LinkedIn. There's people that do that, but that's fine. That's part of their brand. It's what they do. But when you go to somebody's posts and you see that they actually answer those comments, you know you're going to engage there. So you start a conversation. You continue to try to give first, right? You add value. You don't expect them to do anything for you. Ask great questions. See where it goes. And if you do that consistently, people are going to come to you and say like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? Or I had somebody else reach out to me the same week you reached out to me and said, we'd like you to write a guest article for our site because we like what you're writing and posting here. I've had lots of opportunities come online because I've been engaging in a respectful, thoughtful, value-added way. And if you show up and you're consistent and you do a little bit of this each day, this is going to keep happening and you'll start to meet different people and new opportunities will come up. If you're searching
go ahead.
No, go ahead. You finish.
Well, I was going to say, when I was not nervous about reaching out to you to see if you'd be willing to be a guest on my podcast, because we already did have that relationship through the comments. It takes the nerves off on both ends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you think about it, you're starting out online and you're connecting with people and you're starting to develop those relationships. And then at some point you want to try to move to a real conversation. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, especially when they're looking for a job, you can start out connecting or reconnecting with your dormant ties online, try to move to a phone conversation or a video conversation, or when we get out into the world and start going places again, go have the coffee again, because that's when you can really get into those deeper conversations and develop those relationships. But it certainly works well, given the environment we're in, to connect online and then move to a platform like a video call or a phone call, to get to a point where you start to kind of, again, get to know people and find out that they are a real person who's authentic, that's, got things they're trying to achieve and also things that they can help you with.
Yeah, I have been astounded at the power of this platform to take two sentence comments and have them serve as a way to springboard onto more meaningful conversations. I think you and I were talking back and forth today on LinkedIn about what I do every summer. I take 2 months off. I don't create one single new I don't post anything brand new at all. I just stick around for the comments because I like the conversation, and the people that connect, I don't know if my following doesn't necessarily go up, but the people who connect with me, that has never gone down. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot of power in the comments. Do you recommend people use search filters to search for hashtags or certain words so that they find people in their space that are creating content on these platforms?
You can. I think you can look a lot of different ways. I mean, if you're on LinkedIn and you're interested in certain companies or industries, start following the company or go to the company page and see who the people are that work there. And you're going to want to see who's posting frequently. I mean, a lot of people don't post. I think they say less than 1% of people on LinkedIn even post with any consistency. It might even be lower than that. So a lot of people aren't going to be doing that, but you'll start to see who does post. And then you, like I said, you can follow them. Once you follow them, you're going to see things in their feed. And I also like to look at who else is following that person or who is that person commenting on. So you can make this a mass production or environment where you're trying to find a bunch of people and connect with all of them, or you can think more about organic growth on LinkedIn of who are the people that I see and like, and what are they posting? Who are the people that follow them and comment on their posts? Whose posts do they comment on? Should I follow that person? I do that a lot. I know when you're just starting out, that can be a little difficult if you don't have a lot of connections or you're not following a lot of people. Who do I follow? Who do I look at? So yeah, you could probably use some hashtags or some other search terms to kind of start to see who the people are that consistently show up, and start there. Again, it goes back to this theme of consistency. And a lot of people will say, I don't have time. Again, it's not a priority to show up on LinkedIn every day and follow these people. But as I said before, go back to making it 5 minutes. You don't have to spend hours on the platform, 5, 10, 15 minutes. See what you can see who you can comment on, leave one comment. Again, same thing, same approach is don't overcomplicate this. Don't make this hard. Yeah. If you do it every day, it's going to really add up over time. It's really going to, the impact is going to grow quite a bit. It's just a matter of again, making a priority. Is it important for you? And will you show up every day to do a little bit of work?
Absolutely. I worked with a career changer. It's been a couple of years, but I remember he said, I spent 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening commenting on people's stuff, directed with targeting the industry that he wanted to move into, and use that to turn cold connections into warm ones, and then use those warm connections to reach out and then launch a series of informational interviews. And it worked. It was great.
Yep.
So you have given us many networking to-dos. What's your biggest networking faux pas, or what's your big networking don't?
Asking for a job in the first message that you send to somebody. Nobody is going to get the message that says, if you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn or any platform or by email and says, I need a job, can you help me? Or do you have any jobs? Nobody's going to say, oh yeah, I had this list of secret jobs right here that I was just waiting for somebody to randomly reach out to me so that I could place some person I don't know anything about. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, they're not really thinking that's going to happen, but you got to redirect that question in, well, what kind of jobs are you looking for? What is it you're looking to do? What is it you've already tried? What have you been doing that's not been working? But if you're out there looking for a job and you find somebody who you think could be helpful or a good connection, don't, again, go into this with the idea of what can you give to me today? Go into this with, how can I help you, person that I want to connect with? What can I give to you? And as we're talking about LinkedIn, what you can give is give a good comment, give something to the conversation, share the post. I'll give you an example. I was telling you I was working on this ebook and that I'm getting ready to launch. And I looked at what I'd already done, which I'm not a designer. I don't have an eye for it. And one of the people that commented on one of my posts, I was going through and looking at it, and she's a graphic designer. And I clicked on her profile and saw some of the work she had done and followed her posts and things like that, and reached out to her and said, hey, I have this ebook. Would you be willing to do some design work on it? And she said, yeah. She got that opportunity and got that job, basically, that contract, because she interacted with my posts and left a good comment. It just so happened I was looking for a designer. Now, is that always going to happen for you? Not every day, but every once in a while, somebody's going to say, hey, I've got this opportunity for you. And they're going to go to the people that they see and that they've interacted with and that they think, okay, this is a real person who I can help, as opposed to just, I did that because it was easier and I was more comfortable than going on to one of the Upwork or Fiverr platforms and picking some random person I don't know.
Well, that she became part of your proximate network.
Yeah,
that way exactly. As well.
Exactly. So she did a great job and did the work, and I'm getting ready to, put that out in the world. And, it all came because she interacted with my posts on LinkedIn. Like I said, it's not going to happen every day for you, but if you show up consistently, those are the kind of opportunities that happen, and you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. Like out of nowhere, all of a sudden I got this work, I got this opportunity. Somebody contacted me about this. And then you just get used to it and you say like, that's great. I'll just keep showing up another day and see what happens.
Well, 9 times out of 10, when I hear someone say, oh, it fell into my lap, it came out of the blue, when you dive deeper, they're just sort of intuitively, or they have made it a habit of following a lot of the practices that you laid out in our call. Yeah, yep. I agree with you. So your discussion about your ebook is the perfect segue for my last and favorite question. What is next for you in 2022? So you mentioned this ebook. What else do you have on the agenda for this coming up year?
Trying to have more conversations with people who are struggling with networking. I'm always trying to ask more questions, understand what is it you're really struggling with, because as I try to teach people about this, whether it's through webinar, group coaching, or through the book, or now the ebook, which is available through Gumroad. I'll have links to it on my site.
Great.
And it goes with my book, so to speak. You don't have to read my book in order to use the guide, but they kind of go together a little bit. But where I want to learn more, or where I'm really curious, is when people try what I recommend, is it working? Is it not working? Or where are the people still struggling? I would love to be able to teach people this approach and teach people what I talk about in my book and my ebook. And I want to know how people best learn that. You can do videos, you can have worksheets, you can have books, you can have audios. But what is it that's really going to motivate people to do this stuff on a day-to-day basis? So if I had to focus on one thing in 2022, that's what I want to learn. What works? Is it a daily reminder? Is it a daily text message? I don't know. I know what works for me. And at the same time, I know that everybody's a little bit different. And those are the kind of things I want to learn or figure out in the coming year. So everything I'm doing, whether I'm writing on LinkedIn, or whether I'm doing podcasts, or whether I'm doing webinars, or promoting my book and my ebook, it's all centered around finding out from real people how they use the information and what results they got, and what I can do differently to help them out.
Okay. To adapt. I love that. So if people want to connect with you and purchase your things, I've got your LinkedIn, your website, your Twitter on the bio, as well as a link to the book that you have on Amazon, which is available on Kindle and in paperback. Are there any other places where people should go to follow and learn from you?
The best place I would say is LinkedIn. I post every day on LinkedIn, and I'm always trying to post things that are advice to help people with their networking. And if they have questions, or if they are struggling with something, they can either post it in the comments or send me a message. But I would say LinkedIn is the best place to follow me and connect if you want to connect. But at the very least, follow me, because that's where I put everything that I'm working on and everything that I'm talking about. So that's probably the best location.
No, you're a great follow. I love your posts. They're insightful. They're easy to take action on. So thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Well, it's been such a pleasure. It's the end of the year. This probably won't get promoted until January, but between now and then, I hope you have a wonderful holiday, and I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to chat with me.
You too. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed being on, and hopefully this will be helpful to all of your listeners.
You've been listening to The Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's online CM hiring and decision makers, please visit www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.